Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 27 was finally shown at WWDC 2026 this week, and Apple finally listened to what many of us have wanted for years. iOS 27 actually focuses on bug fixes, stability, and improvements. In this video, we'll talk about the latest Apple news, some new features, and the overall experience. Not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page, where at the time of this video, there's over 12,000 votes and 210 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the update is like for most of us, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. And of course, we still have iOS 26.6 betas, as well as iOS 26.5 and 26.5.1. Now, Apple this week revealed just how many devices were running iOS 26 prior to WWDC. On their website here, you can see App Store. The App Store makes it simple for users to discover purchases. And in this particular list here, you'll see that we have different statistics about how many people are using which phone. So it says 86% of all iPhones introduced in the last 4 years were running iOS 26 before WWDC 26. 79% of all iPhones were running iOS 26. 79% of all iPads introduced in the last 4 years were also running iPadOS 26. And then also 68% of iPads were running iPadOS 26. So you can see all of these here, and I'll link them in the description below. Some countries are now seeing the Apple Vision Pro travel case go out of stock and be discontinued. We're not seeing this everywhere, but it looks like they're discontinuing it as stock starts to run out, and many people have suspected that Apple has sort of given up work on physical hardware Vision Pro devices. Vision OS is still very much a thing, but it looks like the focus may shift to more glasses-style updates as well. So this is something we're starting to see run out, but let me know if it's still available where you live. The new Siri AI feature is not available in the EU to start, and China as well, and this is making quite a few people upset. However, Apple has said that Siri AI would have to allow data to be given to the EU on request, among many other requirements. However, the EU has said that Apple not launching Siri AI to start is on Apple and not on the EU. According to Reuters, the EU has said Apple was simply unable to develop interoperability solutions that meet essential EU privacy and security standards. Instead of trying to find a suitable compliance solution, Apple simply made a request to the European Commission to be exempted from their interoperability obligations. That's not an option. Apple basically will not share any data, doesn't have any data as they don't collect it, and so this is creating issues. So hopefully they can work this out sooner rather than later. Also, the new Siri AI update is apparently not using any of Google's Gemini. After the WWDC 26 keynote, Craig Federighi held a tech talk along with a couple others on the team to discuss Siri AI. Craig said, "Of course, we don't have the Gemini app as our app. In fact, none of the client code is part of how we run on iOS. For these models, we use none of the models that Google deploys to their customers, nor do we use the infrastructure and means by which they deploy models to their customers. And then when it comes to the knowledge base, we of course don't use Google Search or anything like that as the foundation of our system." So it looks like they are using their own custom model provided by Google, and of course using some of their cloud compute, but on private cloud compute from Apple specifically. Now, when it comes to new features, there's a couple new things to talk about, and I'll cover tons of new features in a follow-up video soon. The first thing is, if you power off your phone, it has a new look. So you'll see here it says slide to power off, and it looks completely different with liquid glass. So that's something that's new. Also, something else that's been updated, if maybe we move a few different icons here, we'll just move them to the middle. Maybe we don't like this, we can actually shake to undo. Let's try it again. Shake to undo, and it will move everything back. So it moves the last thing back, and it looks like step by step. Undo. You can do that one by one. So we can go back a few more, and it will move everything back to where it was. So this is a nice thing that maybe we'll have undo all in the future, but this is something I like to see, that they actually have additional options here if maybe you make a mistake and want to move something back to where it was before. Now also, Tap to Share gets an update in iOS 27 for businesses who use iPhone to transfer data with customers using NFC. So in some locations like the United States, you can tap to pay to someone else's iPhone if you're a company. And with this update, customers can share contact information if they choose membership signups, share email, they can share addresses, and more. Apple also now gave us an option within Messages to get rid of the little text dictation dialog button. So we can go into our settings here and get rid of that. I'll just use my app shortcut here. It takes a moment. We'll go into our settings for Messages. And under the field where it says Show in Text field, we have Record Audio, Start Dictation, or None. If we switch it to Start Dictation, you'll see what it looks like here. It's the little microphone. And if we go back here, we can switch it to none, and then it disappears. So if you don't want that there at all, you can get rid of it. If you do want it there, just leave it on record audio or start dictation. I prefer to use dictation all the time, so I'll just leave it there. One other thing I wanted to mention is if you use the Apple Watch and you like the feature where you have the walkie-talkie, that's no longer an option on watchOS 27. So there is no walkie-talkie option throughout any of the apps. They've completely gotten rid of it this time around. So maybe not enough people were using it. Apple also updated and brought back the remote app for Apple TV, and if we go into this, we can now use it in landscape. So it will change to landscape mode, and then of course you have additional options here as well, but they've brought it back, and again, many apps we're seeing in landscape also. Also, if you use WhatsApp regularly, you'll need to update your device to at least iOS 15.5 by the end of the year. So by the end of November, this will be a requirement. You can see it on their website where it says currently iPhones running iOS 15.1 and newer are fine, but after November 30th, you'll need 15.5. So you may need a new phone in order to run it, or just make sure that you're updated. Now also, if you're using Telegram, there's a new Telegram app specifically for Apple Watch that launched this week. I have a Telegram channel as well, but if you use that and you have it installed, just go into your Watch app, go down to the bottom here when you're under My Watch, and you'll see that there's now an option to install Telegram on the watch itself. Also, one other thing I wanted to share is an app compatibility list with iOS 27. This typically happens every year. Someone posts it on Reddit. I'll link it in the description below, but you can see iOS 27 app compatibility discussion, and then it's about all the different apps that currently work or don't and may need to be updated to be compliant. But of course, when iOS 27 launches, we should have that compatibility. When it comes to releases, Apple released a new AirPods beta firmware update, bringing them to version 9A592E this week. I have a separate video on those, and it's compatible with the AirPods Pro 2, AirPods Pro 3, AirPods 4, and 4 with active noise cancellation. Now, AirPods Max 2 updates are coming, but they're not here with Beta 1. They're coming with Beta 2, according to Apple. And that will give you access to the EQ if you're using it on your iPhone. So if you have iOS 27, you go to Audio and Routing, you'll have the equalizer here. It's not super complex, but it's nice to have, and this is how I have it adjusted, at least currently. Now, when it comes to releases, well, iOS 27 Beta 2 is probably a couple weeks away, so based on what we've seen before, probably around the 22nd or 29th, then we'll typically get iOS 27 Public Beta 1, usually in early July, as Apple has already confirmed. They just haven't given us a date yet. And then, of course, we're waiting for iOS 26.6 Beta 2 as well. I'm thinking that will be sometime next Monday or Tuesday, and then we'll have staggered releases with iOS 26.6 Beta 2, iOS 27 Beta 2, iOS 26.6 Beta 3, and then they'll probably be at the same week at some point. Now, of course, we'll have betas throughout the summer and a public release of iOS 27 usually in mid-September around the next iPhone launch. When it comes to iPhones, iPhone 17, 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max continue to sell incredibly well. TrendForce is now claiming that Apple pushed production up by 19.7% year over year for the first part of 2026. So they're selling tons of them, they're making a lot of them, and it seems like many people are upgrading as there's great value with the iPhone 17 having ProMotion, and even the 17 Pros continue to sell incredibly well. When it comes to the AirPods Pro 3 experience, I've been using them full time since I've updated to the beta. I've had 0 disconnects, so much better experience. However, using it with my Mac, occasionally I'll get some, not disconnects, but degradation, but I am using that with macOS 26 or 26.5. So with macOS 27 at this point, with Golden Gate, I've had 0 disconnects, 0 issues, and I'm using it with visionOS 27 Beta 1 as well. Again, no issues for an early beta. Very good and very impressive. But again, it will continue to improve, and hopefully it continues to get much better as far as connectivity to the Mac. Now with iOS 27 Beta 1, I've been using it full time on my main device. I don't typically recommend that, but it's been pretty impressive so far. Now there's still some issues. You'll see it's still indexing. This is heavily dependent on how often you charge it. I leave it on the charger all night long, every night, but also how much storage you have, how many photos you have, and things like that. So it's completely normal. And I'm glad Apple is showing this, as it tells you it's still indexing. And at this point, you really can't determine what battery is like if this is not completed yet. So that's something that we typically know is going on in the background, but it's telling us a status. Some people have had it complete. It completed on my iPad, and now it's improving. But again, give it time to complete before you judge battery and everything else. As far as the Siri wait time, if it's available in your country, this could be hours or days. If you signed up for it right away, you probably already have it, but at this point, it could be another week or so. It just depends on where you are in the line, and of course, availability from Apple. But just give it some time, and then you can try it out. Now, as far as the overall experience, the experience is pretty great. I would say it's at least as good as iOS 26.5 for the most part. It does have some bugs, of course, but Apple did an incredible job this year and listened to pretty much all of the complaints we had. So things such as the wallpaper bug, you'll see if we scroll up, it stays vibrant. In fact, there's almost zero change whatsoever. So really it seems to be about the same, at least for me. And then also it's very smooth. Most of the time it's super smooth. Sometimes when I unlock the phone, it's a little bit stuttery, but most of the time it's very, very smooth. And then maybe it will stop after a couple of days. But for a beta 1 from a major release, this is very impressive. Also, it's very fast. Apps open incredibly fast. So going in and out of an app, they load fast. No real complaints there. Back into Safari, back out. It's just very impressive how fast everything loads. So Apple has done a great job here optimizing everything. There's great news when it comes to CarPlay. It's fixed for me. While it is a little bit slow on the interface this time around, it hasn't disconnected once. So the connectivity issues they said they worked on, and it looks like it's fixed. But let me know if it's fixed for you. Also, Siri is pretty good, but it still has a little ways to go. So asking it things like what device you're using, it doesn't seem to know yet, but it's great at planning a route with multiple routes in it, asking different things, asking it to create shortcuts. It's pretty impressive to start. And of course, you can just use the search or ask, pulling down anywhere. So you don't have to pull down from the dynamic island. You can pull down anywhere on the display. Notifications are on the left, control center's on the right, and no, there's not an option for that currently. Also, I had a couple issues where I had to restart it. I've restarted it twice, once due to slowness and it just acting odd. The second time, the keyboard disappeared and I couldn't get it back. I closed out apps. I tried everything else. I had to restart it in order to fix that. So it's again, not perfect. I've heard from others that they're having this issue. Restart it. It seems to fix it. Also, using Siri to power off the phone can fail for some. The camera can freeze in third-party apps for others. So depending on maybe if you're in Siri, try switching modes and then opening the camera. Also, screenshots seem to work, but editing them often doesn't save properly. So maybe you want to crop something like this. It doesn't often save properly, especially if you go to place it in a third-party app. iPhone mirroring currently doesn't work properly, and VoiceOver can crash for some. Some are having Wi-Fi drop. However, that's been really great for me. No issues there. And many bugs are listed in Apple's release notes. So make sure that you submit feedback, but first check out their release notes on their website. This is public facing, so anyone can check this out. But if you go in here, there's lots of known issues. For example, with AirPlay to home theaters fail when a PIN or password is required. Workaround is disable the home theater configuration. Again, lots of known issues where you can't upgrade AirPods Max 2 to beta firmware yet. So lots of little known issues. Go through all of this list. If you're having an issue, see if it's known. If it's not, then go ahead and submit feedback. Now with iOS 26.6 Beta 1, we won't talk about the previous versions that much, but it seems to be a lot better than 26.5 for some. It still doesn't feel as smooth and fast though as iOS 27 at this point, but it seems to be a little bit better. Going in and out of apps is fine. Going into maybe music, you'll see it loads pretty fast. Again, not as fast as what you get on iOS 27 though. With iOS 26.5.1 and iOS 26.5, they continue to be problematic and have seemingly gotten worse over time. Battery life seems to be poor or getting worse for many people. It depends on the app you're using, of course. If you're using meta apps such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, they seem to use a lot of power. But in general, it's okay, but definitely needs some refinement. I typically hear complaints from family members, as well as many of you, that iOS 26.5 and 26.5.1 are just not that great. Of course, many people are still on iOS 18. They're holdouts, but iOS 26 is actually better at this point than iOS 18 was at the same point last year. I went back and looked at some of my videos, and there's actually more complaints. So it is getting better. It's just hard to really see those improvements unless you have a giant leap with iOS 27. Now, when it comes to heat and thermals, it's still a little bit warm. Mine is still indexing. I expect that, but let's go ahead and check thermals even though it's updating and doing things in the background. So we'll go ahead and run benchmarks and see what it's like. Now with both being iPhone 17 Pro Max, the one on the right here is running iOS 27 Beta 1, and we're right around, let it recalibrate here, we're right around 38 degrees Celsius. On the one running iOS 26.6 Beta 1, we're right around 35 degrees Celsius or 24.8. So it's actually doing a little bit better on 26.6, but keep in mind, we're still processing a lot, indexing, and this is a first beta. When it comes to benchmarks, you'll see on the left we have iOS 26.6 Beta 1 with 3,873 for single-core, 10,015 for multi-core. On the right, iOS 27 Beta 1, I'm getting some of the better scores I've seen, 3,753 for single-core, 9,700 for multi-core. So it seems like it's going up, but again, keep in mind it's processing in the background and will improve over time. When it comes to battery life, let's take a look at the public versions currently out, iOS 26.5 for example. Thanks to Abhishek for sending in his battery life. This is on an iPhone 16e running iOS 26.5 with 94% battery health, charging to 100%. You'll see he charged it twice but had 7 hours and 11 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 8 minutes of screen off time, and used 85% of the battery. I've seen this much better from him. It seems like it's not as good as before, and I'm seeing the same thing with iOS 26.5.1. So thanks to Cameron for sending this in on iOS 26.5.1. This is on an iPhone 17 Pro Max, and I believe he just went down to 99% battery health. But you'll see 3 hours and 46 minutes of screen active time, 33 minutes of screen idle time, and used 59% of the battery. He's gotten much better before. He's using Facebook heavily, and that typically is what's probably causing this. But again, it seems like it's just not as good as it was before. With iOS 26.6, not enough of you are using it at this point, but let's take a look at battery on iOS 27. So I've been using it full time, again, while it's indexing. And if we go to battery health, I'm at 100% with 105 cycles. And if we take a look at battery usage, yesterday I used 2 hours and 5 minutes of screen active time, 1 hour and 35 minutes of screen idle time using 54% of the battery. So pretty poor in general. You'll see how much it was charged in cars and things like that. On Monday, it was probably the best, but again, charged 3 times. So I'm getting a few hours of screen on time. Hopefully it improves, but it's still indexing. So just keep that in mind. But 75% of you say that battery is either better or it's too early to tell due to indexing. Only 25% of you say it's worse, but that again is because you're still indexing. Those who are not indexing are actually saying it's much better. So if you're wondering if you should install iOS 27 Beta 1 at this point, I'd say probably hold off. If you have an extra device, maybe an extra iPad or an older iPhone, definitely try it out. But wait until at least the public beta to try it out on your main device. That's usually when it's stable enough. It's decent already, but sometimes you're going to have to reboot it. And I've seen some people actually go into recovery mode and not be able to recover it. They'll have to restore everything. So just keep that in mind. When it comes to overall storage, let's take a look at that. So if we go into settings, we looked at this the other day. Once I installed it, we'll go to general and then iPhone storage. Let's compare it with 26.6 Beta 1. Once it loads, if we scroll down, you'll see with iOS 27 is definitely taking up more space, 16.22 gigabytes compared to 14.59, and Apple Intelligence is definitely using more space, 16.37 gigabytes compared to 7.67. I don't really mind that on this device. I have more than enough storage, but some may mind that if they have less storage. System data, of course, is going to vary up and down, but this just gives you an idea of what to expect with it. 25 gigabytes is fine on my 17 Pro Max. Now, as far as the overall experience and what you had to say, let's take a look at some of your comments. Cordama27 says, iPhone 13, 27 Beta 1. Honestly feels a lot faster than 26.5, and this is the first time I can say that about a first dev beta. Battery life is noticeably worse, but nothing too bad. A few glitches here and there, but it's overall good enough to use as a daily. JacobBB.C said, iOS 27 Beta 1 runs as perfect as iOS 17 on my iPhone 15 Pro Max. I'm so impressed. Alexa Mia Official said, I decided to test out the iOS 27 beta on my iPad mini 7th generation. It was working okay for a few days, however as a VoiceOver user I experienced a few things. VoiceOver would constantly crash and Siri AI would stop speaking mid-response. I had also powered off my iPad for a few hours, only to find out that it was completely frozen and needed to be plugged into a Mac and downgraded. I am considering updating when Beta 2 comes out. Liptonacer says, I'm using iOS 27 Beta 1 since the first day. It's been working better every day. Index is still loading, but I'm so happy compared to iOS 26. Less bug and more stability. I'm very impressed for Beta 1. It's running like iOS 26.3 beta, my battery life at 84%, and is not good for now. iTyson Official said, I'm using iOS 27 Beta 1. It's pretty smooth than iOS 26. One thing that I have is a screenshot bug. If you're editing a screenshot and save it, it doesn't save changes at all. Hopefully Apple might resolve it in iOS 27 Beta 2. Compact Disc Rewritable said, iOS 27 is nearly magic. Often the first developer betas of the new big software update are barely usable and a battery hole. But this time, from the first beta and while it's still indexing, it works far better than iOS 26.5 in terms of battery and speed on iPhone SE 3. And it's only going to get better as the later betas releases. Alex the programmer said, iOS 27 has been running better than iOS 26 was on iPhone 15 Pro Max. Very minor glitches that require an app restart with a few applications. Generally better for battery life and how smooth everything feels. Jay Muez says, hi Aaron, I'm using iOS 26.6 beta for over 2 weeks now, and I have to say it's one of the best iOS 26 versions I've used so far. There are still some minor bugs here and there on my iPhone 17 Pro, but the overall performance has been great for me. Battery life and thermals are a lot better on this beta than on 26.5. I'm not updating to iOS 27 betas yet. I'll probably wait later for later betas or the RC. Javino60 says, 16 Pro Max iOS 27 Beta 1, the best Beta 1 I've seen in a while, fast and smooth. Decent battery life for a beta, especially since indexing is finished. A bit of stuttering in some apps, but I keep them updated. Overall, I am very pleased. Cadent58 says, on iOS 27 Beta 1, it is running well on my iPhone 14 Pro. It is still indexing and it sometimes gets hot, but the battery life seems the same as iOS 26.5 and the performance seems better than iOS 26.5. With iOS 26.5.1 and iOS 26.5, it still needs a lot of work. At first, we thought they were much better, but then they have seemingly gone downhill over time. With iOS 26.6 Beta 1, it seems like it's pretty decent, but at this point it's just a placeholder for iOS 27 until we get the public release. So it's something that's going to improve a few things, but iOS 27 is what improves a lot. And with iOS 27, I'm very hopeful. iOS 27 Developer Beta 1 is widely being praised as one of the smoothest, fastest, and most stable Beta 1 releases Apple has put out in years. It shows major responsiveness leaps over iOS 26. However, there are some users still navigating early quirks like persistent 2 to 3 day device indexing or more like mine, heavy initial battery drain on many phones, again probably due to indexing, and of course a long wait list or regional locks for the new Siri AI features. However, with Beta 1 being this good, by the time the public beta is out, we should be in very good shape, and then the public release should be the best in many years. I think it's an incredible leap forward, and definitely Apple has been listening and really fixed most of our complaints and added most of the features with the exception of split view, so I think it's a great release overall. So that's everything with iOS 27 Beta 1, iOS 26.6 Beta 1, iOS 26.5.1, and iOS 26.5. This again has made me very hopeful for the future of iOS. Let me know how your experience with iOS 27 or any of the other versions are going in the comments below. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.